Most men call it normal aging when they bolt upright in the small hours to find the bathroom. Yet that quiet habit is not harmless at all, because every broken stretch of sleep can nudge blood sugar in the wrong direction, push blood pressure off course, and train the bladder and brain to repeat the same alarm tomorrow and tonight. I want you to try one gentle change that can start to break that loop so that you sit to urinate and give yourself a calm 30-second pause before you try again, because that small reset helps the outlet relax, helps the bladder empty more completely, and gives your sleeping brain less reason to pull you back to full alert. I am saying this as a clinician who has cared for many men, and also as a patient who once believed that waking to pee was the price of getting older. And I learned the hard way that a single disturbed night can echo through the next day or two in the form of sluggish energy and cranky appetite, a pattern that clinical research from respected American institutions has connected to insulin resistance, elevated sympathetic tone, and impaired cardiovascular recovery after midnight. Picture the plumbing you were born with as a soft-walled funnel seated under the bladder, and imagine that the tissue around that outlet is a ring of smooth muscle that responds to hormones, nerves, and inflammation. So when you spring out of bed and push against a sleepy stream, you teach those muscles to guard and to clamp, while a seated posture with a deliberate pause invites them to relax. And that is why the same volume can pass with less effort and less wakefulness if you change the ritual rather than simply fighting it. When I first tried this, I felt foolish, because I had spent decades standing tall and willing the stream to start. But the very first night I sat down and counted a slow half-minute before trying again, I realized that my bladder felt lighter, and my mind returned to sleep with less friction, and over the next week, that single habit began to shorten the time I was awake, which is the goal because in the early morning, the brain is less ready to fall back into deep sleep once startled. If you need a simple way to measure progress without gadgets, then keep a small notepad on the nightstand and jot down the time you wake and how long you were up. And do not worry about exact minutes, because your aim is to see the trend bending toward fewer awakenings and shorter bathroom trips, as your outlet and bladder relearn how to empty without a struggle. This is not a miracle cure, and it does not shrink tissue overnight. Yet it is safe, it costs nothing, and it works alongside every other step we will explore. And that balance is important because the best care stacks small wins that you can live with, rather than chasing a single dramatic fix that fades. You might ask whether this advice is truly medical and whether there is science behind it. And the answer is yes, because sleep scientists and urologists have long described how sleep fragmentation worsens glucose handling and how pelvic floor mechanics influence flow. And while I will keep our language plain, I will keep our standards high, translating dry data into simple actions you can try before you brush your teeth. Here is your mini assignment for tonight so that you do not have to wait for another lecture, which is to stop fluids a couple of hours before bed if your doctor agrees. Sit when you go, breathe slowly, let 30 seconds pass, and then try again without straining. And in the morning, take note of how alert you feel after that second half of the night, because your body is already telling you whether the change helped. Stay with me, because after this first foothold, we will map out why symptoms matter just as much as size, how metabolism and hormones steer the whole story, and how 5 simple steps can tilt the odds back in your favor. But for now, give yourself permission to try the calm double pause and see whether your night begins to belong to you again. I used to shrug at those short wake-ups as nothing more than age, until I saw how a single broken stretch of sleep can quietly push blood sugar higher, make blood pressure wobble, and set off the stress circuits that keep the bladder twitchy for the rest of the night. And that is why my first move is not a pill, but a small evening ritual you can start tonight so that screens go dark a little earlier, the room is kept cool and dim, and you make one calm bathroom visit right before lights out to take pressure off a bladder that loves to send false alarms. Here is the risk that often gets missed, which is that when you snap awake at 3 in the morning, your body releases alert signals that raise heart rate and tighten vessels. and the brain learns to expect that alarm the next night, while research from major American sleep centers and public health agencies has linked repeated sleep fragmentation to poorer glucose handling and higher cardiometabolic strain. So this is not just about convenience, it is about protecting the engine that keeps you steady through the day. In plain language, the nervous system has two gears, a daytime go gear and a nighttime repair gear, and every time you flip the switch to go at the wrong hour, you cut short the hormone pulses that help you process sugar and calm the prostate outlet. So the goal of the evening ritual is to make it easier for your brain to stay in the repair gear and to make bathroom trips less likely and less jarring if they do happen. When I started asking patients to treat sleep like a prescription with a dose and a timing and a place, they began to notice something small but real, which is fewer jolting wake-ups and shorter trips when they did wake, not because the prostate shrank in a week, but because the bladder and outlet were no longer being trained to panic. And several told me that their morning energy and appetite felt steadier after only a few nights. The advantage of this approach is that it is safe, free, and pairs well with every other step we will take. And it carries a second advantage that matters as much, which is confidence, because when you prove to yourself that a simple change moves the needle, you are more likely to follow through on the rest of the plan, while the drawback is that it takes patience and may not be sufficient by itself if your metabolism is already deeply out of balance, or if you have an untreated sleep breathing problem that keeps the alarm ringing. To make this actionable without gadgets, decide on a consistent wind-down time. Dim the room, avoid large amounts of fluid for a couple of hours if your doctor agrees. Make that last calm visit, and if you still wake in the night, resist the urge to push against a stubborn stream. Sit, breathe slowly, count a gentle half-minute, and try again. Then slip back to bed without turning on bright lights, and in the morning simply note how long you were up, so you can watch the trend over the coming week. I will keep our language simple, but our standards high. And where I lean on evidence, I am leaning on broadly accepted findings from American academic clinics and national health agencies that have examined how poor sleep and urinary symptoms travel together, and how restoring stable nights improves insulin sensitivity and cardiovascular recovery. And my job is to translate that into a routine that fits a real-life home. Stay with me, because next we will talk about why chasing a smaller prostate is not the only goal, and why easing symptoms can give you back your nights even before any tissue changes catch up. But for tonight, give the ritual a fair try and let your body show you whether a steadier night is within reach. I want to say something that may save you months of frustration, which is that chasing a smaller prostate can distract you from the real prize, which is a quieter night and a calmer bladder. And the risk is simple, because if you focus only on size, you may overlook the habits and signals that keep waking you, while the early win is to aim at symptom relief first and let tissue changes follow in their own time. As a clinician, and as a man who has made the same mistakes, I once stared at measurements and forgot to ask how the nights actually felt. And when I finally put comfort and function first, the results arrived sooner because sleep steadied, energy returned, and the mind stopped bracing for that early morning sprint down the hall. Here is how we will travel together, which is by using a plain spoken roadmap with 5 simple stops that build on one another, and you do not need to memorize them tonight because I will carry the weight and guide you through each step, but you can start this very evening by choosing one tiny anchor, such as preparing a dark, cool room and placing a pen and a small card by the lamp, so you can mark a single line when you wake and a single line when you return, a gentle way to notice change without turning the night into a test. The science behind this priority is not exotic, because American sleep researchers and public health agencies have shown that broken nights strain glucose control and the cardiovascular system, and urologists have long observed that lowering arousal and easing outlet resistance can reduce urgency and nocturia even before any measurable shrinkage. So the practical path is to calm the system that decides whether to wake you rather than fighting the clock or the tape measure. I will keep my promise to translate data into actions you can live with. And the advantage of this approach is momentum, because early symptom relief builds confidence and helps you stay with the plan, while the drawback is patience, since numbers on a report may take longer to move than the way your night feels. Yet in real life, the night you live is the measure that matters. If you need one more nudge, then try this tonight, which is to set a simple intention before lights out that you will sit if you need to go. Pause for a slow half-minute and return to bed without bright light or scrolling, and in the morning, ask yourself a single question about how rested you feel, because that answer is the compass we will use as we move through the 5-step roadmap ahead. The biggest danger hiding in plain sight is not a number on a scan, but the way your body whispers that something is off when the stream is weak. The urge returns minutes later, and the night breaks into pieces. And here is the twist that helped me and many of my patients, which is to stop wrestling the stream and start listening to the symptoms, because forcing only trains the outlet to clamp, while gentle patience retrains it to release. And tonight I want you to try a single shift, where you ask one question the moment you lie back down, which is, how empty do I feel on a simple scale of words from heavy to light? Then write one quick word on a note card, so you can watch the pattern settle over the week. In clinic, we group these nagging signals under a simple umbrella called lower urinary tract symptoms, which basically means how often you wake, how urgently you need to go, how weak the flow feels, and whether there is that stubborn sense of leftover. And while the label sounds technical, the experience is painfully ordinary because it is your sleep, your mornings, and your confidence that take the hit. The science beneath the label is straightforward in human terms, since the outlet at the base of the bladder is a ring of smooth muscle that talks to hormones and nerves and to the quiet flame of low-grade inflammation. So when you bear down at 3 in the morning, you send a loud message to clamp and protect. But when you sit, breathe, and wait a calm half-minute, you invite the ring to soften and the funnel to open, which is why the second try often feels easier and emptier. I learned this not only from textbooks, but from men who came back after a few weeks with softer eyes and steadier mornings. And the common thread was not a dramatic change in measurements, but a quieter night built from small choices, a pattern that echoes what American sleep centers and urology clinics have long reported about the link between fragmented sleep, poorer glucose handling, and more frequent night trips. The advantage of focusing on symptoms first is that it gives you a lever you can actually pull tonight, and it lets you see progress in how the night feels rather than waiting for a report to change. And another advantage is that this approach fits safely beside medicine or surgery if those are needed later. While the drawback is that symptom tracking is not a diagnosis, and you must speak with your doctor if you have pain, fever, visible blood, or cannot pass urine, because those are red flags that call for prompt care. If you are willing to try a tiny experiment, then leave a pen and a small card by the lamp. Do the calm double pause when you go, avoid bright lights, and on return write one honest word about how empty you feel. Then, in the morning, notice whether your energy sits a little straighter, because that feeling is the measure we will use as we move into the next steps, and it is the measure that matters in the life you actually live. The most dangerous moment for your sleep is not the first hour after lights out, but the last few hours before dawn, when your brain is supposed to do its quiet repair work. And here is the risk that catches many men off guard, which is that a single abrupt trip to the bathroom can flip the body into full alert and keep it there long after you return to bed. So tonight, I want you to pair the calm seated approach with one simple nervous system reset, where you breathe in slowly through the nose, pause for a gentle beat, breathe out even more slowly through the mouth, and repeat this soft pattern for a short minute before you try to fall asleep again, because that tiny ritual turns down the alarm and makes it easier for the outlet to relax. In plain language, your nerves run two main programs: a go program that tightens vessels, quickens the heart, and braces muscles, and a repair program that slows the rhythm and lets hormones do their night work. And when you snap on a bright light, tense your belly, and push against a stubborn stream, You are telling the body to choose the go program, while sitting quietly with a small pause and slow breathing invites the repair program back online, which is why the second attempt often flows easier and your mind can drift instead of spinning. I learned this the hard way in my own house, and then at scale in clinic, where men who practiced a dark, quiet path to and from the bathroom with slow breaths and no scrolling began to report shorter wake times, steadier mornings, and fewer, jolting alarms, a pattern that echoes what American sleep clinics and public health researchers have shown about the harm of late-night arousal on glucose handling and cardiovascular recovery. The advantage of this nervous system first approach is that it is safe, free, and ready to try tonight, and it stacks neatly with medicine or surgery if those are needed later. And a second advantage is that it gives you a portable tool you can use in a hotel room or a hospital room without gear, while the drawback is that it requires consistency, and it will not by itself fix problems like untreated sleep-breathing disorders or severe pain that keep the alarm ringing, so it should live inside a fuller plan that we will keep building together. If you want a simple way to test whether it helps, then prepare the room to stay dim. Leave your phone face down. Set your path clear to avoid stubbing a toe. And after you go sit for that quiet half-minute, breathe slowly for a short minute, and let your shoulders fall before you slip back under the sheets. Then, in the morning, notice whether your energy and mood feel less brittle, because that feeling is the first sign that your nights are bending back toward repair, and that your bladder and brain are learning to settle again. The real danger is not the one night you get up to pee, but the quiet way the brain and the bladder can learn to do it again and again until the habit owns your last hours before dawn. And that is why today, I want you to claim one simple line in the sand, where caffeine lives only in the earlier half of the day, and your last steady drink happens well before bedtime, so that your body stops getting mixed signals after dark. I say this as a clinician who keeps hearing the same apologetic sentence from men and from their partners who whisper that they thought this was just what aging looks like, and I say it as a patient who once let that belief cost me morning energy and peace at home, because when your night breaks into pieces, your metabolism and your mood pay for it the next day. In the American clinics where I work, we see that nocturnal trips tend to travel with fragmented sleep and with tired mornings. And while the science behind that link can sound technical, the lived experience is simple, which is that when the body is trained to wake, it will keep waking until you retrain it with calmer habits and clearer timing. Here is how to begin without gadgets, which is to set a personal cutoff for caffeine in the early afternoon if your doctor agrees, and to finish your last glass of water a good while before bed, and to walk a quiet path to and from the bathroom without bright light if you do wake. Then to use a tiny morning check of how steady your energy feels and whether your partner slept through the night, because the people who love you are part of this system too. The advantage of this approach is control, because you are choosing the timing that your nervous system will practice. It is nearly free. It pairs perfectly with medicine or with pelvic floor work or with surgery if those become necessary. And it models a calmer home rhythm that lowers the chance of late-night alarms, while the drawback is that it asks for consistency, and it will not solve red flag symptoms like pain, fever, visible blood, or an inability to pass urine, which always deserve prompt medical care. I learned to respect how common this is by listening to the same story repeated in different voices across different states. And the pattern is always the same, which is that once we stop treating night waking as a harmless quirk and start treating it as a trainable habit, the nights begin to change, not in a single leap, but in enough small steps that mornings feel less brittle and evenings feel less tense. If you want a place to start today, then choose your caffeine window now. Choose your last steady drink now. And tell the person who shares your room what you are trying, because a small shared plan keeps you honest and keeps the lights low, and keeps the hallway clear when it matters. And tomorrow morning, ask one question about how rested you feel and whether the night felt smoother because those answers are the compass we will keep using as we move forward. The quiet risk that steals your night is not only a cranky prostate, but the hours you spend sitting still, because long sitting feeds background inflammation and blunts insulin response, which primes the bladder to fire alarms near dawn. And that is why tonight I want you to take a slow after-dinner walk on the flattest, safe path you have, and then perform a gentle set of stand and sit moves at the edge of a sturdy chair, so you feel your legs support you without strain. I say this as a clinician and as a man who once tried to outthink the problem from a chair until I learned that motion is a message your body understands, because when you move your muscles, soak up sugar more gracefully, your vessels relax. Your stress circuits quiet down, and the ring of muscle at the outlet is more willing to let go when you ask it to. In simple terms, exercise is the opposite of the spiral that wakes you, because steady movement lowers inflammatory noise, improves insulin sensitivity, and helps pelvic muscles coordinate, so the stream starts with less pushing and empties more fully, which means fewer jolting wake-ups and a better chance of sliding back to sleep. In American academic clinics and national health agencies, the consistent finding is that men who keep a regular pattern of moderate activity tend to report fewer nighttime trips and less urgency, and that lines up with what I see in real homes when patients trade a motionless evening for a short neighborhood loop and a small dose of legwork. The advantage of this plan is reach, because it helps your bladder, your heart, and your blood sugar together, and it costs little more than time and shoes, and it pairs well with medicine or with pelvic floor training or with any procedure. Your doctor may advise later, while the drawback is that the plan fails if you sprint out of the gate and flare your knees or your back, which is why we start slow and steady and why we keep one hand near a wall or a countertop if balance is not perfect. If you want exact next steps for tonight, choose a route that feels safe after dinner. Put on supportive shoes, walk at a pace where you can talk without gasping for a short 10 to 15 minutes. If your doctor agrees, return home, sit at the ras-PO to front edge of a sturdy chair, plant your feet, and stand up. Then sit down with control for a handful of smooth repetitions. Then call it a win, and write one simple line on your bedside card about how the night felt. I learned to trust this humble routine when men returned to my office with steadier mornings and a calmer look in their eyes. And they were not doing hero workouts. They were doing small, honest sessions most nights, and that rhythm was enough to bend the arc of their symptoms. Keep the lights low if you do wake in the night. Sit to go take a calm half-minute and notice whether your bladder feels lighter, because movement done in the evening makes that second attempt more likely to succeed and your mind more willing to drift back to sleep. The hidden spark that keeps waking you is the quiet background inflammation that builds when your evenings are still. And here is the part most men are not told, which is that a little movement late in the day can turn down that flame and make the outlet at the base of the bladder less jumpy near dawn. So tonight, I want you to try a brief 5-minute sequence that begins with slow standing marches in place, then gentle shoulder rolls, then a few relaxed pelvic floor releases where you imagine letting the tailbone grow heavy and the lower belly soften, and finally a calm sit to stand from a sturdy chair. Because this tiny circuit tells your vessels to open a little, your muscles to sip sugar more smoothly, and your stress circuits to quiet. I say this as a clinician who has watched the same pattern for years, and as a patient who once believed that only hard workouts count. Yet the body responds to signals, not bravado, and steady signals at the right hour help the repair side of the nervous system come forward, so that if you do wake later, the second try at the bathroom arrives with less pushing and a clearer sense of empty. In plain language, movement is the chemical broom that sweeps extra sugar from the bloodstream into muscle, which lowers the nudge to make more stress hormones after midnight, and it is also the gentle hand on the blood vessels in the pelvis, helping them relax, so the ring of smooth muscle around the outlet can release when you ask it to. A story that matches what American academic clinics and national health agencies have shown about exercise reducing inflammatory markers and improving insulin handling and sleep depth. The advantage of this evening primer is that it is small enough to keep and wide enough to help your bladder, your heart, and your mood at the same time. And it pairs cleanly with medicine, pelvic floor therapy, and any future procedure, while the drawback is that it asks for consistency and a patient ramp, because if you rush or add big jumps, your knees and back may object, and your confidence may slip. If you use blood pressure medicine or get lightheaded, then keep a hand near a counter and rise slowly, and if pain fever, visible blood, or the inability to pass urine appears, then call your doctor because symptom training does not replace urgent care. Here is how to begin tonight, without counting reps, which is to set a gentle timer for 5 quiet minutes to march in place at a talking pace, to roll the shoulders, to breathe low and slow, to picture the pelvic floor melting instead of bracing, and to finish with a few controlled sit-to-stand moves from a chair, and then turn off bright lights. Take your calm bathroom, visit if needed, and give yourself a half-minute pause before a second try, and in the morning, ask one question about how rested you feel, because that answer is the compass we will keep using. The quiet mistake that keeps many men stuck is a dinner plate that is low in minerals and high in easy sugars, because that pattern can make blood sugar swing after midnight and leave the bladder trigger happy. So, tonight I want you to try a simple swap at the table, where half the plate becomes red and orange to produce like slow-roasted tomatoes and sweet bell peppers, while the other half includes a small palm-sized portion of zinc-rich protein, such as lean beef or eggs, and a small handful of roasted pumpkin seeds. A combination that delivers lycopene and zinc without drowning the evening in starch or syrup. I say this as a clinician who has watched symptoms soften when patients choose whole foods rather than chasing a capsule, and as a patient who once reached for supplements first, only to learn that the body responds best to steady signals from real meals, because zinc helps immune balance and tissue repair, and lycopene is a gentle antioxidant found in red produce that travels well with olive oil. And both of these nutrients fit naturally into a plate you can cook in an American kitchen. In plain language, a steadier dinner lowers the late-night push to make stress hormones, and a steadier set of hormones makes the outlet at the base of the bladder less likely to clamp when you ask it to release, and when you pair those foods with a respectful fluid cutoff before bed, your brain has one less reason to flip on the alarm in the small hours. The advantage of this approach is that it is safe, affordable, and family-friendly, and it supports heart health, weight control, and glucose control, while you are also working on sleep and movement. And another advantage is taste, because a pan of tomatoes with a drizzle of olive oil or a bowl of eggs folded with peppers is comfort food that does not sabotage the night. Yet there are real drawbacks to name, which include the fact that changes arrive gradually, that some people do not tolerate dairy or red meat, and that tropical fruits, rich in lycopene, may carry more sugar than your metabolism can comfortably handle if you are already on the edge. And while zinc pills can be useful at times, high doses for long stretches can upset copper balance. So I favor food first, unless your doctor advises otherwise. If you want a clear way to start tonight, then keep dinner simple and colorful with tomatoes and peppers, and a small serving of lean protein. Add a small handful of pumpkin seeds for crunch. Skip the late bread basket and the sweet dessert. Keep fluids modest in the final hours before bed. If your doctor agrees and when you return from any bathroom trip, sit, breathe. Give yourself a calm half-minute, and try again before slipping under the covers. Then in the morning, ask how rested you feel and whether the stream felt easier, because those answers tell us whether your plate is already working for your night. Over the next week, keep a small note card by the lamp and write one short line about how empty you felt after going and how long you were up, not to chase perfection, but to notice whether a richer dinner in lycopene and zinc paired with steadier carbs is helping your nights belong to you again. The trap that keeps good men stuck is not steak or tomatoes, but blind trust in labels and headlines, because a tidy claim on a package or a bold line in a study can pull you away from what your body is clearly telling you at 2 in the morning. So tonight, I want you to run a simple plate audit where you choose whole foods you can name, reduce added sugar, keep protein to a sensible palm-sized portion, choose an honest splash of healthy fat like olive oil, and then write one short line about how the night actually felt, because your symptoms are the feedback that matters. I say this as a clinician who reads papers for a living, and as a patient who once chased perfect numbers on a label while my nights fell apart. And what the better American clinics teach us is to respect context, since many nutrition studies track people who live very different lives, and the extra risk often belongs to the lifestyle rather than to one food on the plate. In plain language, zinc and lycopene are helpers, not heroes. And they work best when they arrive inside real meals that do not spike your sugar or drown you in processed oils, which is why I start with tomatoes, peppers, a modest serving of lean protein, and a small handful of pumpkin seeds cooked at home instead of reaching first for a capsule, and if a supplement is ever needed, I let the doctor lead so that copper and other minerals stay balanced, and so that the pill does not become a shortcut that erodes the rest of the plan. The advantage of this food-first mindset is control, because you can adjust dinner tonight and feel the difference in the morning. And it pairs well with movement, sleep work, pelvic floor practice medicine, or even future procedures. And another advantage is honesty, because your notebook does not care about marketing. It records whether you woke fewer times and whether the stream felt easier, while the drawback is patience, since changes build across many evenings, and you may need to tune fat, fiber, and seasoning to fit your digestion, your cholesterol story, and your taste. When I tested this in my own kitchen, I learned to ask 3 simple questions before the pan hit the stove, which were whether the plate is mostly whole food, whether the carbs are gentle, and whether there is enough, but not excessive, protein, and my nights answered back more clearly than any headline ever did. If you want a clean start this evening, then keep dinner colorful and steady. Use olive oil rather than deep frying. Choose a palm-sized serving of protein, add tomatoes and peppers, toss a few pumpkin seeds over a salad, and skip the late dessert and the extra refined bread. And if you do wake later, sit to go, breathe slow. Give yourself a calm half-minute and try again before slipping back under the covers. Then, in the morning, look at your card and ask whether the arc is bending toward fewer wake-ups and a calmer stream, because that story is the one we are here to change. The mistake that turns a short wake-up into a long-lost hour is the instinct to stand fast, tense up, and push, because that move flips the nervous system into full alert and teaches the outlet at the base of the bladder to clamp. So tonight, I want you to practice a tiny bathroom ritual that keeps the body in repair mode, which means keep lights low, sit down, plant both feet, breathe slowly, let your belly soften. Wait a calm half-minute, and then try again without strain before you return to bed. I say this as a clinician and as a man who once treated the night like a test of will and lost. And what I learned in my own house and in American clinics is that gentler mechanics empty better and wake the brain less, which is why men who sit and pause report an easier second, try a lighter feeling afterward, and a faster slide back to sleep. In plain language, the outlet is a ring of smooth muscle that relaxes when the body feels safe and clamps when it senses effort and alarm. And bright, light breath holding and hard pushing all shout alarm, while a seated posture with slow breathing whispers safety and invites the ring to soften so the funnel can open and the stream can pass with less noise. The advantage of this ritual is reach because it costs nothing. It pairs quietly with every medicine or procedure, and your doctor may choose. And it respects the reality that in the early morning, the brain resists, dropping back into deep sleep, once startled. And a second advantage is confidence, because every calm night trip you complete without a fight retrains the system to expect ease rather than struggle, while the drawbacks are patience and preparation, since you need a steady fluid cutoff before bed if your doctor agrees, and a clear path so you do not fumble for a switch or your phone. And if you tend to feel lightheaded, stand up slowly with a hand on a stable surface. If you take a water pill earlier in the day, ask your doctor about timing because moving the dose earlier can reduce late alarms, and if red flags appear such as pain, fever, visible blood, or an inability to pass urine, seek care rather than trying to outbreathe a dangerous problem. Here is how to try this tonight without gadgets, which is to set the room to stay dim before you turn in. Decide on your last calm bathroom visit. Then if you wake later, avoid bright screens. Sit, breathe low and slow. Count a gentle half-minute, and try again once without forcing. Then return to bed and let your shoulders fall, and in the morning write one short line about how empty you felt and how quickly you drifted back, because that is the measure we will use to see whether this small ritual is giving your night back to you. The fastest way to turn a harmless bathroom trip into a long sleepless stretch is to stand in the dark, brace your belly and rush, because that posture tells the outlet at the base of the bladder to clamp, and it also raises your risk of a stumble. So tonight, I want you to sit on a stable seat, plant both feet, and use a low footstool to bring your knees a little higher than your hips, while you lean your chest slightly forward with a long, easy spine and soft belly. Then breathe slow, wait a calm half-minute, and try again without strain before you return to bed. I say this as a clinician who has watched the same pattern in homes across America, and as a patient who learned the hard way that the body listens to angles as much as it listens to effort, because when the hips tip slightly forward, the pelvic floor carries less tension, the ring of smooth muscle receives a message of safety, and the stream begins with less pushing and fewer jolts to the nervous system. In plain language, the bladder sits like a soft water bag, and the outlet is a ring that opens best when it is not being forced. And the small change in hip and knee position you create with a simple footstool lowers the need to bear down the way. A gentle slope helps a slow creak flow, which is why the second try often feels easier, emptier, and quieter for the brain. The advantage of this posture first approach is that it is inexpensive, safe, and ready to try tonight, and it pairs neatly with any medicine, pelvic floor training, or procedure your doctor may choose later. And a second advantage is safety, because sitting with a steady base and a small light within reach reduces the midnight risk of a fall, while the drawback is that this setup asks for a few minutes of preparation, and it may not fit people with recent hip replacement, severe knee pain, or a tendency toward lightheadedness on standing. If that is you, then skip the footstool, keep the seat stable, and move slowly with a hand on a secure surface, and always speak with your doctor if you have pain, fever, visible blood, or cannot pass urine, because posture cannot fix a dangerous problem by itself. Here is how to set this up before bed, so you are not improvising at 3 in the morning, which is to place a sturdy chair height seat if needed. Add a low non-slip footstool within easy reach. Set a soft night light that does not glare. Clear the path from bed to bathroom. Then, if you wake, sit, breathe, soften your belly, let your shoulders fall. Count a gentle half-minute and try once without forcing, and slip back under the covers without bright screens, and in the morning, write one simple line about how empty you felt and how quickly you drifted back, because your notebook will tell you if this small change in angles is helping your nights belong to you again. The part nobody warns you about is that a capsule can calm a symptom while quietly letting the real driver keep smoldering. So, before you reach for a bottle, I want you to hear this from a clinician who also wears the patient hat, which is that supplements like saw, palmetto, pygeum, pumpkin seed, extract, and nettle can help some men feel less urgency and less night waking, yet they are helpers, not saviors, and the safest way to find out whether one of them belongs in your plan is to change only one thing at a time for a short season while you keep food first and keep your doctor in the loop. Here is the simple logic in plain American terms, which is that many of these plant extracts have gentle anti-inflammatory effects and may relax the outlet just enough for the stream to start with less effort. But the same relief can arrive from steadier meals that favor tomatoes, peppers, lean protein, and pumpkin seeds from your kitchen, and from movement that tells your nerves to downshift at night. And those choices strengthen your heart and sugar control, regardless of what a capsule does. When I tested this approach in clinic, I asked men to choose one option only and to give it a fair short trial while writing down 2 things on a bedside card, which were how empty they felt after going and how long they were awake. And what came back to the office were stories not of miracles, but of small, steadier wins when the capsule lived inside a fuller plan, and clear signs when it did nothing useful, so we could stop it without regret. The advantage of this supplement as assistant mindset is control, because you avoid mixing signals and you respect your body enough to let real-life data guide you. And another advantage is safety, since going one change at a time lowers the chance of odd interactions with blood pressure, pills, sleep aids, or medicines for the prostate, while the drawbacks are real, which include uneven product quality, slow onset, and the danger of using a capsule to avoid seeing a doctor when red flags appear. If you do decide to try, then start with a brand your clinician trusts. Make no other changes during the short trial. Keep fluids sensible in the later evening. If your doctor agrees, sit when you go, count a calm half-minute, and try again once, without forcing, and keep your nights otherwise the same, so you can tell what changed. And if you notice dizziness, chest, pressure, pain, fever, visible blood, or trouble passing urine, stop and seek care, because no plant extract should be asked to fix an emergency. I favor food before pills because the same pumpkin seeds that some capsules come from can sit on your dinner plate beside tomatoes and peppers and a sensible serving of lean protein and give you zinc and lycopene with fiber and flavor and without the guesswork of what else is in the bottle. And that kind of steady input makes it easier for your nervous system to choose sleep over alarm near dawn. In the end, this is about clarity, not perfection, which means you deserve to know whether a given capsule truly moves your night or whether your wins are coming from the habits you can keep. And the only honest way to learn that is one change at a time with a clear note in the morning about how rested you feel and whether the stream felt easier. Because your lived night is the measure that matters. The hidden risk in the supplement aisle is not danger on the label, but the time you can lose chasing a headline, because a shiny study can convince you to swallow a capsule for weeks while the real driver of your night waking goes untouched. So tonight, I want you to use a simple decision frame that keeps food first, makes one change at a time, chooses a product with independent quality testing, and writes down how your night actually felt, so you learn quickly whether the capsule earns its place. I say this as a clinician who reads the papers and as a patient who has tried the bottles. And here is why the evidence looks messy in plain American terms, which is that many trials are small. Many products are not the same from one brand to the next. The dose and the timing often differ. The outcomes rely on how men report their platelet clocks, symptoms, and the placebo effect in urinary complaints is famously strong. So it should not surprise us that some studies look bright, while others look flat. What matters at home is whether your own nights bend toward fewer wake-ups, an easier start to the stream, and a quicker slide back to sleep, and that is why I favor a short, honest trial with one change, only while your meals stay steady with tomatoes, peppers, a modest serving of lean protein and pumpkin seeds, because that steady plate supports your heart and your sugar, whether the capsule helps or not. In the Better American clinics, we also watch for signals of safety and fit, which means we look for brands that submit to third-party testing, we keep an eye on blood pressure, mood, and digestion, and we make sure there are no clashes with medicines for the prostate, for sleep, or for the heart, and we stop the experiment the moment red flags appear. The advantage of this evidence in real-life approach is control, because you are not waiting for a perfect paper to bless your choice. and you are not stacking multiple pills that blur the picture. And another advantage is speed, because a brief focused trial tells you more about your body than a stack of mixed results ever will, while the drawbacks are patience and discipline since changes build slowly, and since you have to resist the urge to add a second product before you know whether the first one moved the needle. When I used this frame with my own night, I learned to ask one clear question at dawn, which was whether I felt more rested and whether the bathroom trip felt lighter, and I learned to stop a capsule that did nothing rather than keep paying for hope. If you want to start safely, then talk with your clinician. Choose one product. If you choose any at all, keep your evening fluids sensible. If your doctor agrees, sit when you go. Breathe slow. Count a calm half-minute, and try again once without forcing, and keep a small card by the lamp where you write one short line about emptiness and one short line about how long you were up, because after a short season, you will know whether the capsule is a true helper or whether your wins are coming from the habits you can keep for life. Remember that supplements are assistants, not anchors, and the anchor is still your plate, your movement, your sleep ritual, and your conversation with a doctor who knows your whole story. And that is the combination that has given the men in my clinic their nights back, more often than any headline ever did. Most people believe that waking up stiff and sore is just the price we pay for getting older. Yet what if that stiffness was your body's first alarm bell that something deeper was brewing? I used to brush it off myself until I witnessed how many men and women in their 60s and 70s slowly lost their balance, their strength, and even their independence because they ignored those morning aches. The science is simple but often overlooked. While we sleep, blood flow slows, muscles tighten, and joints dry out from lack of motion. It is like leaving a car parked in the cold without oil. The moment you turn the key, the engine strains. Our bodies do the same, and that strain can build into inflammation that gnaws at the cartilage meant to protect us. I recall a patient, Tom, who told me he felt a little stiff but thought nothing of it. Within a year, he was leaning on a cane, not because time had suddenly aged him, but because the silent inflammation turned into chronic pain. The encouraging truth is that this chain can be broken. A short daily stretch, even 10 quiet minutes before breakfast, restarts circulation, oils the joints with fresh synovial fluid, and resets the body's rhythm for the entire day. The Mayo Clinic has shown that consistent, gentle stretching lowers inflammation and supports mobility even in adults well past 70. I began adding it to my own mornings, and the clarity, the ease of movement, and even the mood lift were undeniable. Tonight, place a chair or a soft mat where you will see it first thing tomorrow. That simple cue will remind you that your body deserves those minutes of care before the day sweeps you away. It is never too late to reclaim the first steps of your morning, because every small act of motion builds into the strength to keep living on your own terms. Do you feel that stiffness stealing into your mornings too? Tell me about it, because your story might be the spark that encourages someone else to rise with hope instead of resignation. What most men overlook is that missing something as small as a 10-minute walk each day can set off a hidden cascade that stiffens the hips, slows the gut, and wakes the bladder when the night should be quiet. I know this truth not only from research but from my own missteps, because I once let busy days crowd out movement until the midnight trips grew more urgent and the mornings felt brittle. The danger is subtle, but real. Stillness repeated day after day becomes the new language your body learns, and that language trains inflammation to settle in, blood sugar to drift upward, and nerves that guard the bladder to fire alarms near dawn. One of my patients, Robert, chuckled when I told him that a gentle 10-minute walk in the evening could change his nights. 2 months later, he returned with softer eyes and a grateful wife who was finally sleeping through without his constant rising. The science agrees with Robert's story. Studies from American Heart Associations and national sleep clinics have shown that light, regular walking reduces inflammatory markers, steadies glucose, and lowers the chance of fragmented nights which is why such a simple habit echoes so powerfully in your bladder and your brain. The advantage of this daily walk is its reach because it touches joints, mood, blood sugar, heart, and bladder together. And its cost is almost nothing. Another advantage is that it can be done anywhere, whether in a neighborhood loop or a quiet hallway, and it stacks cleanly with medicine or any other therapy. The drawback is that it demands consistency, even on the days when fatigue tempts you to skip, and it will not be enough alone if danger signs appear such as pain, fever, blood in the urine, or the inability to pass urine, which require a doctor's care. If you want to start tonight, choose a safe short route, wear shoes that support you, return under soft light, and if you wake later, sit calmly, breathe low and slow, pause for a half minute, and try again without strain. Then in the morning, take a card from your bedside and write one honest line about how rested you feel, because that answer is the compass that will show you whether those 10 minutes are already bending your nights back toward peace. The most dangerous piece of this puzzle is not always the bladder itself, but the broken sleep that follows. Because once your night splinters into fragments, the repair systems of your body falter, hormones slide out of balance, and the nerves that guide the outlet at the base of the bladder grow more irritable. I did not fully believe this until I met patient after patient who told me the same story, that the real suffering was not the trip to the bathroom but the long hours staring at the ceiling afterward. One man in his early 70s looked me in the eye and said he could live with one trip, but what was breaking him was lying awake until dawn and walking into the day already defeated. The science could not agree more. American sleep centers and large health surveys show that fragmented nights push blood sugar higher, tighten blood vessels to raise blood pressure, blunt memory, and strain the heart, and every one of those forces loops back to irritate the bladder and make the cycle harsher. The advantage of treating sleep as a cornerstone rather than a luxury is that it multiplies benefits across heart, brain, mood, metabolism, and bladder. And the tools to begin are often free and simple, like dimming lights before bed, leaving screens outside the bedroom, or using a calm breathing pause when you return from the bathroom. The drawbacks are that progress takes time. It requires discipline in habits that can feel too small to matter, and it is never a substitute for urgent care if you face pain, fever, visible blood, or the inability to pass urine. Tonight, you can test this for yourself by setting the room cool and dark, leaving your phone face down in another room, and if you do wake to go, then sit with both feet steady. Breathe slowly, count a calm half-minute, and try again once without forcing before sliding under the covers. Tomorrow morning, write one line on a bedside card about how long you were awake afterward and how steady your energy feels, because that simple record will tell you more than any gadget whether your nights are bending back toward the deep rest your body has been missing. The hidden trap that ruins more nights than most men realize is not always the bladder itself, but the cup in their hand, because caffeine, alcohol, and late sugar can all conspire to leave the bladder restless and the brain wide awake after midnight. I learned this truth the hard way when I convinced myself that an evening coffee helped me focus, only to spend the night pacing the hallway instead of resting. A man named James once told me he could not sleep without a nightcap, yet when he replaced it with sparkling water and pushed his caffeine back to before noon, his wife came in smiling and said the whole house was finally quiet again. The science is plain. American sleep foundations have shown that caffeine can linger in the bloodstream for up to 8 hours. Urology clinics report that alcohol fragments, deep restorative sleep, and sugary drinks in the evening drive blood sugar swings that make nerves fire and bladders spasm. The advantage of reclaiming your evenings from these stimulants is that improvements often show up within a single week, and the cost is almost nothing. And another advantage is sharper mornings, with steadier energy that ripple through the whole day. The drawback is real too, because social routines and personal cravings can tempt you back to that late coffee or glass of wine, And some men feel rebound drowsiness or sugar cravings for the first few nights while their system resets. If you want to test this safely, begin tonight by drawing a line at midday for caffeine, by trading alcohol for water or herbal tea after dinner, and by making desserts smaller and earlier. Then, if you do wake, sit with both feet steady, breathe low and slow, pause a calm half-minute, and try once without strain before slipping back under the covers. In the morning, write one honest line on a bedside card about how many times you woke and how steady you felt, because that note is the compass that will show whether your evenings are already handing your nights back to you. The most overlooked culprit behind restless nights is often not age or diet, but the pill bottle sitting quietly on the nightstand, because many of the very medicines meant to protect your health can also push the bladder into overdrive after dark. I learned this the hard way in my own family, when my father began a new prescription and suddenly doubled his trips at night until his doctor shifted the timing. I met Harold, a man in his late 60s, who thought his body was simply wearing down with age. But when we looked closer, the real driver was his evening water pill, which kept his kidneys busy long after he had gone to bed. American urology clinics and national pharmacy boards have long warned that diuretics, blood pressure tablets, sedatives, and even certain antidepressants can either irritate the bladder or fragment the deeper stages of sleep. The advantage of recognizing this connection is clarity, because once you see the link, you can work with your doctor to adjust the dose to an earlier hour, or in some cases, try a safer alternative. And another advantage is compassion, because you stop blaming yourself for what is actually a side effect. The drawback is that you cannot make these changes alone. And sometimes the medicine is non-negotiable for your heart, your mood, or your blood pressure, which means supervision is essential. If you suspect your pills are part of the pattern, begin by writing down the times you take each one, the number of bathroom trips in the night, and how you feel in the morning. Then bring that record to your clinician so they can tailor a plan. Tonight, if your doctor agrees, keep fluids modest in the later evening. Sit calmly when you wake. Breathe slowly. Pause for a half-minute, and try once without strain before slipping back under the covers. In the morning, add one honest line about how the night felt, because that small piece of information may be the very key your doctor needs to reshape your nights and give you back your rest. The danger most men never suspect is that the mind itself can train the bladder to wake even when it is not full, because stress, anxiety, and loneliness all whisper through the nervous system and hold the outlet too tight. I learned this not in a textbook but from Mark, a man in his late 60s who dragged himself into my office, exhausted from waking 3 times a night. His bladder was not the real culprit. The moment his head touched the pillow, his mind spun through tomorrow's worries until his body answered with alarms. When Mark began a ritual of dimming the lights half an hour before bed, writing a single line about the next day on a card, and lying down with his wife's hand resting on his shoulder as he breathed slow and deep, the night changed. Within weeks, his trips fell to 1, and sometimes none. American Institutes of Sleep and Psychiatry confirm his story, showing that stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline can splinter sleep and irritate the nerves of the bladder, while calm breathing and simple connection lower those hormones and steady the system. The advantage of treating the mind as part of the plan is that it multiplies benefits far beyond the bladder: steadier sleep, calmer mood, lower blood pressure, and even a softer sense of loneliness. Another advantage is simplicity, because the tools are free paper, pen, breath, and a touch. The drawback is that progress demands practice. The old thoughts return, and some men need deeper support from therapy or medicine for anxiety or depression. If you want to begin tonight, then dim your room early. Write one honest line about tomorrow, so your mind can set it down. Place a hand you trust on your chest, or share a calm touch with someone close, and breathe low and slow for a minute. If you do wake later, sit with both feet steady, breathe, pause a calm half-minute, and try once without strain before slipping back to sleep. In the morning, add one short note about how quickly you fell back, because that truth on paper will tell you whether calming your mind is also teaching your bladder to let go. The most dangerous weight you carry into the night is not the years on your shoulders but the inches around your waist, because belly fat is not silent storage. It is an active chemical factory that stirs inflammation, raises blood sugar, and presses on the bladder until it cries out. I learned this lesson in the clinic and at home. Alan, a man of 65, told me he was resigned to waking 4 times every night. What changed was not a new medicine, but the steady trimming of 10 pounds through smaller dinners and short evening walks. Within weeks, his bathroom trips fell to 2, and his mornings carried more strength. American Heart and Sleep Institutes have confirmed what I saw with Alan, that abdominal fat leaks hormones and stress signals that keep the nervous system on alert and make the bladder twitch, while losing even a modest amount of weight lowers those signals and allows deeper rest. The advantage of naming this truth is that progress can be measured with your own belt notch and with your own notebook. And every gain ripples into heart health, joint relief, mood, and bladder control. Another advantage is that you do not need to chase perfection. Even small changes in waistline bring noticeable relief. The drawbacks are that weight loss takes time. Social habits like late dinners and drinks make it hard, and some men need medical support to do it safely. If you want to start tonight, set dinner earlier and smaller, trade the late dessert for a bowl of fresh berries, and take a calm, safe walk before bed. Then if you wake, sit with both feet steady, breathe slowly, pause a gentle half-minute, and try once without strain before slipping back under the covers. In the morning, write one honest line about how many times you woke and how steady you felt, because that note will tell you whether trimming your waist is already giving your nights back. The silent thief that robs so many men of bladder control is not simply the passing of years, but the slow loss of muscle that comes when the body is no longer challenged, because when pelvic floor and core muscles weaken, it becomes harder to hold steady and harder to empty with ease. I saw this in Henry, a 70-year-old retired teacher who told me he was resigned to waking 3 times every night. What changed was not a pill, but the decision to add light resistance bands and chair stands to his evenings. Within 2 months he returned smiling, saying he now rose only once, and sometimes not at all. American Institutes of Geriatrics and Sports Medicine have long shown that strength training in older adults reverses sarcopenia, steadies glucose, sharpens balance, and supports pelvic function. The advantage of building muscle is freedom, because strength buys you quieter nights, safer steps, and the independence to keep living life on your own terms. Another advantage is that resistance training also strengthens bone and lowers the risk of falls. The drawbacks are that progress is gradual. Guidance is needed at first to avoid strain, and some men with joint or heart disease need clearance before starting. If you want to begin tonight, then place a resistance band beside your chair. Make a few slow, steady pulls. Add gentle sit to stand motions, and match each move with calm breathing. If you wake later, sit with both feet planted. Breathe low and slow. Pause for a calm half-minute, and try again once without strain before returning to sleep. In the morning, write one clear line about how strong and steady you felt, because that simple note will show whether rebuilding muscle is already giving you back control of your nights. The greatest danger I see is the belief that the bladder alone is to blame, because hidden conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, and sleep apnea often sit quietly in the background, while the night alarms grow louder. I met Victor, a man in his late 60s, who blamed aging for the 3 times he rose each night. The truth was different. His blood sugar was running high, and his blood pressure pills were timed too late in the evening. Once his doctor shifted the dose and Victor began caring seriously for his diabetes, his night trips dropped by half, and his mornings felt lighter. American Institutes of Heart diabetes, and sleep medicine have shown why. High blood sugar drags extra water into the urine. Evening blood pressure pills can keep the kidneys flushing all night. And untreated sleep apnea fragments rest and floods the body with stress hormones that make the bladder twitch. The advantage of uncovering these deeper drivers is that you not only calm the bathroom trips, but also protect your heart, brain, and kidneys for the long haul. Another advantage is clarity, because you stop fighting the wrong enemy and start treating the real one. The drawbacks are that this path takes medical testing, patient follow-up, and sometimes more medicine or devices like a CPAP mask, which can feel heavy in the beginning. If you want to start tonight, make a clear list of every pill you take in the evening and bring it to your doctor. Keep late fluids modest if your doctor agrees, and set a calm routine with dim light and steady breathing. If you do wake, sit with both feet planted, breathe slow and low, pause a calm half-minute, and try once, without strain, before returning to sleep. In the morning, write one true line about how rested you felt, because that note is the clue you and your doctor can use to see whether hidden conditions are part of your story. The costliest mistake I see is when men try to rely on memory instead of records, because at 3 in the morning, memory is foggy, and without clear notes, both you and your doctor are only guessing. I saw this with Daniel, a 72-year-old retired engineer who came into clinic, convinced he was waking 4 times every night. When I asked him to keep a small card by his lamp and write down each trip, the truth was different. Most nights were 2 trips, and the real thief was the long stretch he lay awake afterward. That single discovery reshaped his plan. American clinics that manage chronic conditions have shown again and again that diaries kept by patients reveal patterns that tests and scans often miss, cut down on wasted procedures, and lead to safer, smarter treatment. The advantage of recording your own nights is precision, because you can see directly whether changes like earlier dinners, fewer late drinks, or calmer rituals actually shift your sleep. Another advantage is partnership, because when you walk into your doctor's office with real data in your own handwriting, you are no longer a vague case, but a collaborator. The drawbacks are that note-keeping takes discipline and honesty, and some men grow frustrated or give up before the story becomes clear. If you want to begin tonight, place a card and pen by your bed, and each time you wake, jot one short line about the hour and how quickly you return to sleep. In the morning, add one more line about how rested you feel. Within a week, the story in your handwriting will show whether the habits you are practicing are already giving your nights back. The most dangerous mistake is believing you can solve every night trip on your own, because the bladder is often only the messenger, while the true problem hides deeper in an enlarged prostate, an infection, or even the first strain on the kidneys. I will never forget Carl, a 68-year-old who kept trying supplements and late-night rituals while putting off his doctor visit. For months, he convinced himself it was normal aging, until one night he could not pass a drop and collapsed in pain, ending up in the emergency room with a catheter. The lesson from Carl is the same lesson I now share with every man I meet. American foundations in urology and kidney health warn that danger signs like pain, fever, visible blood, or an inability to pass urine require urgent care, not patience. The advantage of working with your doctor is safety, because you catch conditions while they are still manageable, and another advantage is precision, because the right tests show what simple habits can fix and what requires medicine or a procedure. The drawbacks are that making the appointment takes humility and effort, and the first step of treatment may feel heavy, but those costs are far smaller than an emergency. If you want to begin tonight, then write down your main symptoms, the number of times you wake, and the medicines or supplements you use, and bring that record to your next visit. Keep late fluids modest if your doctor agrees. And if you do wake, sit calmly, breathe slowly, pause for a gentle half-minute, and try once before returning to sleep. In the morning, add one honest line about how safe and rested you felt, because that simple story, shared with your doctor, may be the very key that gives you your nights back. The costliest mistake I see is when men expect one night of change to erase years of old habits, because impatience itself is the chain that keeps them bound. George, a 70-year-old veteran, came to me frustrated after trying a new routine for just 3 nights. He declared nothing worked and was ready to give up. I asked him to commit instead to 6 weeks and to write 1 line each morning about his nights. When he returned, his eyes were brighter, his steps steadier, and his night trips fewer than he had known in years. American studies in behavioral health have proven what George lived, that habits reshape the nervous system only through repetition, often over weeks, and that persistence turns fragile attempts into durable change. The advantage of embracing this slower pace is freedom, because you stop chasing quick fixes and begin to lay down a foundation that will carry you through the years ahead. Another advantage is the compounding effect, where small early notes in your diary, though unimpressive alone, add together into major shifts. The drawback is that progress rarely runs in a straight line. Some nights improve, others stumble, and the temptation to quit will whisper loudly. If you want to start tonight, choose just one ritual, perhaps an earlier dinner, calm breathing after lights out, or dimming the room before bed, and commit to it for the month ahead. Then, each morning, write a short note about how many times you woke and how quickly you drifted back, because those steady lines will remind you that lasting change is carved by patience and built in steady steps rather than sudden leaps. The greatest risk at this final step is to hear all these tools and walk away unchanged, because knowledge without action keeps you chained to the same restless nights. I think of Samuel, a 71-year-old who sat in my office slumped with years of broken sleep. He began not with a miracle cure, but with one simple shift, an earlier dinner. Then came dimmer lights, calmer breathing, steady evening walks, and a small notebook by his lamp. Within 3 months, Samuel was waking less, slipping back to sleep more easily, and greeting his mornings with a smile his wife had not seen in years. American studies in public health prove what Samuel lived, that small daily choices compound into powerful shifts over time, lowering blood pressure, balancing sugar, easing inflammation, and restoring the deep sleep that heals body and spirit. The advantage of embracing this truth is freedom, because you do not need to chase perfection, you only need persistence. Another advantage is that the gains ripple far beyond the bladder, into heart, brain, mood, and independence. The drawback is that the early weeks can feel slow, and doubt will whisper that nothing is working, but patience is the price of renewal. Tonight you can choose just one tool from this journey and begin, and tomorrow you can write one true line about how the night felt. Over time, those lines will grow into your own story of recovery. And I ask you now, will you carry this forward? Share your story with others, because the words you speak may be the spark another man needs to believe again that his nights, his mornings, and his life can truly belong to him.